Story 1. I broke up with my boyfriend on his birthday for horrible actions he did when he was a teenager. I, 26F at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28M, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated and quite smart, good looks. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and two of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well, and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I am happy to get along well with Thomas's father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday. After a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories as you would expect. But then, Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how, when they were 14 or 15 years old, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy, making jokes, calling names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on MSN Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used in years 2000s, and spent months exchanging messages with him under the false girl identity, flirting, and developing a false relationship with the poor boy. Some people were in the confidence at school, and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin, and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous IRL, asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a shirt Elmer the Elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously, there was no one waiting for him, and they did not know how long he waited over there, by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone, and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor boy stopped coming to class, and apparently changed school, and it is easy to imagine that this must have been extremely traumatizing to him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex, and Bart had any bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse, in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it, and even seemed to regret that they were not good enough at being evil to convince the boy to send nudes or sexy pics. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he had done so. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one shocked. Thomas's father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in the eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he did not even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I could not sleep at all this night, and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him coming to bed around 4 a.m., but I pretended I was asleep. Day 3, Sunday, was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would take Thomas on a 1-1 fancy surprise date for lunch nearby, and then we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all my stuff in silence, and went alone to the train station where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas wishing him happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location 1 hour from the house for a surprise, and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure that everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly, using Google Maps, to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 a.m. when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further, as there was little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant which was 30-min drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 13:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 min, and that he will understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 13:30, he started calling me several times and sent a lot of worried texts. And after 45 minutes, I responded, in French, "So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings?" Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon, but never responded. At some point, an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on, and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me," and hung up. I blocked them. I still felt bad the entire evening, as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did as a teenager, that they were adult ways of saying things, and that I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did. Everyone else seemed to think that I was a bitch. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be 35 or 36 years old now, is well. Wow, okay, so this story is a lot to take in. First of all, when you start dating someone new, you hope that they'll be decent and kind, right? So it must have been a huge shock for her to discover this horrible side of Thomas and his friends. Imagine thinking you know someone and then bam, they reveal they were huge bullies back in the day, and worse, they still think it's funny. The bit where they created a fake girl profile to mess with Arthur is just beyond cruel. I mean, who does that? It wasn't just a prank. It was a full-fledged campaign of bullying that deeply affected someone's life. And these guys were actually proud of it, still joking about it years later. Thomas even regretted not being good enough at being evil. Like, excuse me? That's super disturbing. And how brave of her to just pack up and leave the next morning. I think that was a pretty strong, empowering move. It's like she drew a line and said, "Nope, not tolerating this." And then she gives him a taste of his own medicine by making him wait at random locations. It's a small payback, sure, but kind of a genius way to make her point. Do you all think her reaction was a bit too extreme, or do you agree with how she handled it? Let me know in the comments. It's crazy how much people's past actions can reveal about their true character. Story 2. Micromanager forced to step down after mismanaging a new retail service. This one might be petty and definitely not as epic as some of the posts I've seen here, and I'm long-winded. Relevant background info first. Anyway, several years ago, I was working at one of the big hardware stores in my area. It's a household name and had some upward mobility with decent pay for the area. I never really found a niche there after my first year and a half. I learned quickly though, so they kinda made me a Swiss Army employee. I could work hardware, plumbing, mix paint, make keys, prepare contracts for installs, and knew all the features and flaws of the appliance models we sold. I was happy to do this because I was building a reputation as someone who could do everything. 2 years in, a new program was implemented that I was uniquely qualified to assist with. They created a new position for me. It was marketed as an all-in-one renovation remodel service for interiors. I was to assist the designer with product selection, product information, contracts, and local marketing for this service. Everyone involved was super excited about it. Note, I was still only making $10 an hour in 2015 for this. The problem was that because this was brand new, no one knew how it should work. The designer basically had to figure it out for herself, while I tried to catch her up with all of the store and product knowledge I had accumulated during my unique experience with the company. Issues with the program. 1. It was way too expensive. 2. Product to be used had to come from one of our stores, which was limiting. 3. No one knew about it. It was a rocky start. Coworkers would call me over to talk to customers if they mentioned working on a big project, but that's all we had. No completed jobs to reference or anything provided by corporate to get us running. We made our own stuff. I put together a video advertising the service and got the nod from management to use company card to purchase a TV and media player to roll the video on repeat. We built vignettes in the store to showcase our design ability. I had been picking up a lot from the designer, so it ended up being a partnership in effect. The micromanager. Enter Devin, the assistant manager. He had actually been involved in the project from the beginning and had been pretty supportive and brought good energy at first. But I think he got fed up with issues that we couldn't control, sloppy contractors refusing to fix things that they messed up, slow design process as customers worked out what they wanted, and people just backing out after taking a bunch of our time when they see the price. We were, on average, charging $3,000 more for a small bathroom remodel on labor alone. Consulting and design fees were also worked into the final cost. The product was discounted to basically being tax-free, but as I mentioned, options were limited to products the company sold. It was just too expensive to make many sales on the poorer side of town, where almost everyone knows some kind of contractor or tradesman with connections. It wasn't a good market for this program, but we did manage to start hitting and exceeding our numbers. Number 7 in the region for the brand new program was not bad. And just when we finally started getting some business and a rhythm around 8 months in, Devin decided that it was not working fast enough for him. Obviously, the designer was to blame since he had no authority over the contractors or setting prices. She didn't know what she was doing, and he was going to make some changes. He honestly didn't do much besides hover, bring bad energy, and make terrible suggestions. He didn't understand the scope of what we had to do to get a customer out the door and happy. He forced us to cut corners and get the sale as quickly as possible without concern for liability, for basically destroying a room in someone's home to remake it, or what was realistic in terms of timelines. Customers felt rushed and got nervous. They backed out. We came to a standstill. We would only have 2 or 3 designs in progress at a time, but suddenly, after working our asses off building the program, we had no customers for the first time in 6 months. Obviously, Devin was not subjecting us to his authority hard enough, so he went harder and fired the designer. I lost my patience. Justice or injustice, IDK. I'm a chill dude, but I had been working my ass off for this company, making peanuts on the promise that I was working towards something. I endured working for the incompetent managers that got their positions because they started working there at 18 and made it their life. The toxic alpha male, I will lead, you will follow BS was too much. So I started bullying him back, making fun of him in a teasing way where he couldn't really react without looking bad or losing control. I did that for a while, and he left me alone to run the program in the interim since I was the only option. The designer and I had become friends, though, so I was still mad about how it went down. I wasn't finished yet, but I didn't know what to do. Eventually, they got another designer, and Devin had me moved back to what I had been doing before. Passed over for several promotions that I was more than qualified for. The market had been flooded with long-time employees that were being moved around. Bad luck. But I was done with the place. One day, we were sent an email link to an anonymous manager review survey. The store computers were set up with an always-on and logged-in user profile, so I wrote down the link and verified with a coworker that they weren't unique. In every department I visited that day, I wrote a review for Devin. All different ratings, some good, some bad, but I made the good ones so that they sounded bad, but as if I didn't know it was bad. I did that maybe 10 times. It wasn't character assassination or anything, just opinion-based stuff with some vague examples so no one could figure out it was me. I didn't lie either. I just said what people don't usually say out loud. He would barely look at anyone after that. A couple of weeks later, he resigned his position as assistant manager and took an exterior design position at the other end of the store, as far away from the departments he had been over before. Basically the same thing as what we had done with interiors, but he was in the designer's shoes. I left a couple of months later to work tech support for DHS, but while I was still in training for that, my friends from the store told me he had gotten fired. Maybe he learned something? He should at least have learned how my designer friend felt. They were both fired at Christmas. Wow, what a roller coaster of a story. Okay, let's break this down a bit because there's a lot to unpack here. So, you start off working at this big hardware store and quickly become this jack-of-all-trades employee. Honestly, that's pretty cool. You basically learned almost every department. I can see why they would create a new position for you, especially since you had such a wide range of knowledge. Now, this new program you were working on seemed promising, but had some major flaws. Too expensive, limited product range, and zero brand awareness. Sounds like a tough sell right from the start. Devin, the assistant manager, is really where things took a turn for the worse. It sounds like he started off supportive, but quickly became a micromanager who didn't understand the intricacies of the job. Relatable much? Have you guys ever had a boss like that? Comment below if you have. Your approach to handling Devin was pretty clever, teasing him in ways he couldn't really react to. It's interesting how you kind of turned the tables on him. And then there's the anonymous survey part. I found that pretty gutsy. It's not character assassination like you said, but it's definitely sneaky smart. How often do you hear about someone like Devin having to take a position at the opposite end of the store and then eventually getting fired? Karma, maybe? Or just a lesson learned the hard way? Anyway, feel free to share your own workplace struggles or victories in the comments. Maybe I'll share some advice in the next video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Story 3. Former manager ends my job at the company I loved. I helped end his career in local tech forever. The background, I worked at a very big tech company for a very long time, like decades. Over the years, I had worked my way up from being an N0 to a kind of specialist fixer. I became fairly well known internally as a security, emergency response person. I got assigned the bad or unfixable projects, many of which made news headlines. I have many stories that I can never tell publicly, sadly. Suffice it to say that multiple senior vice presidents in various divisions got to know who I was, because I effectively wrangled gnarly and complex problems and herded many intense tech nerds together to resolve big things in multiple divisions over the years. It was so fun. At the time of our story, I was working on a small security team in a product engineering division. It was a somewhat turbulent time, and our team of 8 had weathered multiple reorganizations and had so many manager changes. It was a lot, but we kept our heads down and did the work, and we all got along just fine. Sidebar, and relevant later, one of the better managers assigned to run our team immediately assigned me a huge and complicated and urgently important project to manage. It would involve people in 6 different divisions, had seriously big legal implications, and our senior VP wanted it to happen by an aggressive deadline within like 4 to 6 weeks. Oh, and my manager was leaving imminently on a long-planned vacation, so he apologetically would be away for the next 3 weeks and unable to assist. The project was to do something big and technical, and which had never been done before, so no one was entirely sure how to do it, who all it would require, what steps in what order. Some of the key players had what we gently called difficult personalities. And oh, by the way, it would definitely make international news and cause a ripple in the industry when we did it. No big whoop. Manager was a decent guy, and he felt bad about leaving me with this thorny mess. And I did it. We got all the people from all the divisions in a room and mapped it all out on a whiteboard. It took days. And hashed out how to do it before the deadline. Actually, well before, for bonus points. And we lined everyone up to get it done. Before we pulled the actual trigger on the very big thing, I had to attend a meeting with the VP and exec leadership, several levels of MGMT above me, and with the legal team to present the plan and to assure all of the execs that we were ready and had it all handled. So I looked the VP in the eye and assured him that I got this. And then I did. The team did the big thing sooner than the deadline. It was flawless. We rocked that. We what? Just another day at the office? The inept manager. A few months after that epic project, our good manager left us for another role, and someone new moved over from an unrelated division out of nowhere. We'll call him Inept Manager. Inept Manager did not know anything about security. He did not know anything about emergency response. He didn't know anything about what our division did. In fact, no one on our team had ever heard of this guy. He was that worst kind of middle manager, self-important, dismissive of everyone, cares most about appearances and ego, micromanages stuff he doesn't comprehend, and just makes everything worse. But he apparently knows people, and those people get him job assignments because of politics? Loyalty? He certainly didn't have any skills or experience for our team. Ugh, that guy is the worst. One of inept manager's many weird quirks was that he didn't think it was appropriate for our team to disagree with or correct each other in front of other people. Things in tech, specifically product development, move pretty quickly, and things change all the time. So if some of our team was meeting with someone from another team, and someone something like, so we decided to make the sky green and we're on schedule, and someone else on our team chimed in to say, actually that's changed. We decided that the sky is now going to be blue and we pushed the deadline back 2 weeks. That just happened in an earlier meeting. Oh, okay, cool. Inept manager would interrupt and say, we clearly need to get on the same page. Let's end this meeting right now and reschedule when my team has all the facts straight. What? That's insane. We'd literally never have any meetings if we waited until everyone knew all of the same information all the time. Other teams would routinely leave meetings with us with inaccurate info which affected release schedules, resources. It was just a mess. 3. Inept manager hostility. Shortly after inept manager became our manager, he started being really hostile to me. Not to everyone on the team, just me. As far as I knew, I hadn't done or said anything to earn his hostility. Suddenly, after 20+ years at this company, I could do nothing right. While this jerk didn't actually understand most of what my job was, he was sure I wasn't doing it right. And he was quick to tell me so, and often in front of others. To the point that my coworkers would take me aside to ask WTF was going on. I didn't know either. The thing is, I was the only woman on the team, and I have a disability. Now I've been through some things working in high tech over those decades. It was very much an old boys club back then. And I was fine. I'm not one to claim discrimination at the drop of a hat or for no reason. However, when I was trying to piece together the cause of this dude's hostility, some of his comments were sexist and not at all subtle. He also didn't like that due to my disability, and frankly my seniority, I was given one of the few offices with a door on it in our new building. The rest of our team was in open floor plan cubicles, which everyone hated. He was incensed that I, a lowly direct report and woman, got an office and he didn't. I had more seniority than just about anyone, so even without my disability I'd have scored the office ahead of him. Note that other men in our division got offices too, because again, seniority, and that bothered him less. But I was the only woman on our floor with a door, and I was his subordinate. His ego did not like it, not one bit. He threw a fit about it, repeatedly. There were lots of other things he said. My favorite among them towards the end was him reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting we just had. Inept manager had told me beforehand not to say anything during that meeting, because he was insisting on sharing incorrect information again and he knew I'd want to correct it. So I sat quietly and kept my eyes on the PowerPoint presentation or the floor nearly the whole time. When I asked him how I'd had a bad attitude when I hadn't said anything, as he'd requested, I didn't like the look on your face. Okay, dude. After realizing there was nothing I could do to make this guy happy with my work and to lose his hostility, I finally went to HR to go on the record. I knew they'd do fuck all about it, but I wanted to document it at least. So predictably, they told me to work harder at getting along with inept manager. And because it wasn't my first rodeo, I went back to my office and emailed HR saying, "Thanks for meeting with me about my concerns about inept manager. I fear his bias and misogyny will reflect negatively in my next performance review. HR should be aware that there is a real problem here, and I hope you'll take steps, etc., etc." Which, of course, they didn't. But now it was on the record. Ivy the Axe falls, and then a few months later he gave me a terrible performance review, as expected. Long story already long, he was trying to fire me for underperformance. Unfortunately for me, the company had started rounds of layoffs all over, and it was the worst possible time to be looking for another job internally. And now I had a bad performance review on my record too. I went back to HR and said, That thing I said I was worried would happen when we met 6 months ago. That happened, exactly as I said. Now what? HR once again was no help. Also, they'd done literally nothing. But hey, it was on the record again. Helpful for the attorney later. Blah, blah, blah. When I realized I couldn't find a new gig at my company because of all of the layoffs, I scored a new job for much more money at a different local tech company. And pretty quickly. I live in a tech-heavy area. There was lots of shuffling between 3 to 4 big companies during this time period, and we'd often bump into other company veterans at these other companies. It was a small world. With my track record and references, it was super easy. After that was lined up, I called an employment discrimination attorney to negotiate my exit from the company I thought I'd work at until I retired. Sad face. Because I had documentation with HR explaining inept managers' misogyny and ableism going back for some time, and because they'd done fuck all about it, and because there were witnesses who confirmed his behavior, they had no leg to stand on. They agreed to write me a relatively nice check to go away and to not sue them, and I agreed to not talk about the details of my separation agreement. I went down to my lawyer's office and signed the agreement. I looked to see who had signed the agreement for the company. I assumed it would be someone in HR, but it was still blank. I'd eventually get a copy once someone there signed it. I took my check and packed up my office and left. Bye, old company. I started my new job a few weeks later. Karma begins. This was August of that year that I left. I got my copy executed contract in the mail in October. Who signed it for the company? Not HR, but my exec VP. The one who asked for the urgent, highly important, legally complicated project. The guy I looked in the eye personally and then delivered on this very big thing he personally asked for before the deadline he asked for. That is who signed off on my separation agreement. I suspect that he had no idea until that moment that I was gone, and I imagine that he likely had many questions about WTF had happened. And also, why did they have to pay me a chunk of money on the way out? Whoops. I chortled when I saw it. Since the VP knew me and we had some history, an inept manager was new to the division and was one of hundreds of middle managers he'd likely never heard of. I'm guessing inept manager had some explaining to do. Mwahaha! I really enjoyed the thought of that. VI, Karma for Reals, cut to November. As I mentioned, it was a relatively small tech community in the area, and those of us who worked in security in particular at Company X would often encounter other current former colleagues at Company Y or Z or whatever. Heck, there was a ton of poaching going on between the companies. One day I got an in-company chat from someone who'd worked in security at my old company. We'll call her Security Colleague. Security Colleague asked me if I knew someone named Inept Manager. Why yes. Yes, I did. Why? Because Inept Manager was appearing on Security Colleague's schedule to interview for an open management position the very next day. It seems that shortly after my former exec VP had signed my separation agreement contract, Inept Manager was actively looking for a new job at a new company. Heh? Security Colleague asked me what I thought about Inept Manager. I said, I can't really talk about it for legal reasons, which, boom, everyone knows what that means. But if you wanted to ring my personal cell phone later this evening to catch up on old times, please do. She did. I hypothetically shared some stories with her about Inept Manager. I also told her where his hot buttons are, the appearance/ego thing, the dominant stuff, etc., and all about his misogyny and ableism, which was perfect since she was conducting his interview. I may have shared some specific scenarios/questions to ask, which I knew would set him off. I wished her luck, and for the love of all that is holy, to please call me after, when appropriate, and tell me how it all went. It did not go well for Inept Manager. When Security Colleague rang me, I couldn't wait. How did it go? Well, he got combative and angry and yelled at me, twice, during his interview to be hired as a manager. There were lots more details, now lost to time. Except, at that company, interviews loops were assessed as such. Strong hire for this role. Hire, but not for this role. Not a good fit for this job, but we like them. No hire ever, not for any role. Inept Manager's interview was rated that last one, no hire ever. Blacklisted from any job ever at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. after being pushed out the door of one of the other biggest tech companies in the world, Derp. Shortly after that, it appeared that inept manager moved himself and his wife and kids a few states away to work at a smaller company in another region. It took less than 6 months from when I left my old company for him to be gone as well. What gets me, still, is that inept manager thought I was so inconsequential, so unimportant, that he didn't bother to check and see where I landed after he forced me out of the company I loved. And when he had to look for a job himself shortly thereafter, it also never occurred to him that I'd have connections with, thousands of colleagues I'd worked with over the years, some of whom could now be working at company X or Y or Z where he was interviewing, and where I'd scored a huge raise for myself. To this day, he doesn't know why his interview at company Y tanked so badly. And since security colleague was not legally precluded from sharing stories she had heard through the grapevine about inept manager's management problems, it's possible that other of our old security colleagues at Company Z and other companies in this area heard those stories too, which means he's unlikely to get a job at any major tech company in this area, maybe ever. Definitely not at X or Y, and they are big companies, among the biggest. And it's all because he's an asshole, ableist, misogynist middle manager who underestimated lil ol' me. Wahahaha. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got an incredible story of karma coming to bite someone right where it hurts. It's a long one, but bear with me. So let's dive right in. This person worked for a big tech company for decades and became a go-to fixer for all things security and emergencies. They managed to impress multiple senior vice presidents with their skills. Like, imagine doing something so complex and urgent that it even makes headlines, and they nailed it with time to spare. Amazing, right? Then, things take a turn. Their awesome manager leaves, and an inept manager steps in. This guy knows literally nothing about the job, but is all about appearances and ego. He's the worst kind of middle manager, micromanaging and not understanding any of it. Anyone had a boss like that? It sucks. And guess what? Inept manager starts singling out our protagonist, even though she's been a star performer for years. He throws sexist comments, gets mad about her having an office due to her disability and seniority, and just makes her life a nightmare. This guy sounds like a real piece of work. Despite her effort to document everything with HR, they're no help. Big surprise, right? Eventually, he gives her a terrible performance review, trying to fire her amidst company-wide layoffs. But here's where it gets juicy. She lands a new job with a higher salary at another tech company and negotiates a sweet exit deal thanks to her documented complaints. Fast forward, an inept manager starts looking for a new job, and guess who's connected with the people interviewing him? Yep, our heroine. It backfires spectacularly on him. He ends up getting blacklisted from one of the biggest tech companies and has to relocate to a smaller company. Karma. Sweet karma. This story is a prime example of why you should never underestimate someone. What do you guys think? Ever had a similar experience? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, peace out.